原住民族在这块土地上活跃约有5、6千年的历史了。
我们已经有14个族群
完成证明了。行政院原住民族委员会正式成立于1996年，是秉持着原住民族自主自治的理念，设置有企划、教育文化、卫生福利、经济以及公共建设、土地管理等5个处，以及文化园区管理局。另外设有秘书、人事、会计3个幕僚单位，还有国会联络组、法规委员会、诉愿审议委员会3个任务编组。
原民会最主要的任务和目标是聆听及分辨族人的声音，凝聚族人的共识，累积族人有形无形的实力，在传统与现代之间，在返本与开新之间，携手开拓一个更具远见、想象力和创造力的未来。
原民会是掌管原住民族事务的中央主管机关，肩负了49万原住民族人的托付，以延续民族历史命脉，促进原住民族社会的整体发展为我们最大的使命。台湾原住民族靠着族群团结和坚强的意志力，走出一条属于自己的路。原民会将带领全体族人
Indigenous peoples in their efforts to fulfill their dreams and vision. Domestically, the integrated planning and coordination of Indigenous affairs, and internationally, the boosting of Indigenous exchanges are the CIP's major policy objectives. Currently, the CIP is pushing forward its Urban Dwelling Indigenous Peoples Life Development Program, which provides funding to county and city governments to provide and strengthen services to their Indigenous residents. In addition, sustainable development projects are being implemented in Indigenous areas. In terms of international exchanges, the CIP sends representatives to participate in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, selects outstanding Indigenous talent to send abroad for international affairs training, and works to develop exchanges with Indigenous groups around the world. The purposes of these exchanges are to allow the world to see and to experience Taiwan's rich and diverse Indigenous culture and to achieve real diplomatic outcomes. Understanding the importance of education, culture, language, information, and media to ethnic development, the CIP has implemented several policies. These include providing subsidies for Indigenous school children to obtain computers, increasing scholarship quotas and amounts for Indigenous college and university students, and encouraging these students to serve in their tribal communities. In addition, community colleges are being set up in indigenous areas to encourage lifelong learning. The CIP assists and provides guidance to indigenous tribes in carrying out traditional ceremonies and preservation, in development of traditional social structures and systems. In addition, it works to strengthen research on Taiwan's indigenous tribes. It has set up indigenous information centers to revitalize indigenous languages and to provide guidance to local cultural museums. The CIP has developed several health promotion measures. These include providing subsidies for health insurance premiums and transportation to medical facilities, as well as promoting moderation in consumption of alcohol and safe environments in villages. The purpose is to provide indigenous peoples with the information and resources they need to take care of their health and to increase their average life expectancy. To develop safe living environments, the CIP, in cooperation with social welfare agencies, has established indigenous family and women's service centers, elderly daycare centers, and preschools in indigenous villages. To provide indigenous women, children, and elderly with comprehensive care and services. To promote long-term stable employment and to decrease the unemployment rate among indigenous people were important objectives of the CIP. The Indigenous Peoples Employment Rights Protection Act continues to be implemented and enforced. Integrating government and private employment networks and resources, the CIP is working to improve Indigenous employment services. Taiwan's indigenous peoples possess a diverse culture, artistic talent, and access to natural resources. Through innovation and proper planning, their traditions can be revitalized to bring about new opportunities. For example, indigenous areas are attractive tourism and recreational destinations. The missions of the Department of Economics and Public Construction are to improve living environments and to promote indigenous enterprises and livelihoods. The CIP has developed selection processes for outstanding craftspeople and a handicraft certification system to encourage artists and artisans to create works and to pass on their know-how to the next generation. This will provide for the sustainable development of Taiwan's handicrafts industry and increase its competitiveness. To assist indigenous peoples in their pursuit of better economic conditions, the CIP operates the Comprehensive Development Foundation to grant subsidies and loans to help indigenous families elevate their standard of living and to support indigenous people in starting their own business, which will lead to more employment opportunities for indigenous people. Through effective land management and use, the CIP carries out its mission of planning and development, as well as provides guidance for the acquisition of indigenous land and the protection of natural resources in indigenous reserve areas. A survey of traditional indigenous territories was carried out in cooperation with local indigenous groups. It served to cultivate surveying skills among the indigenous people and confirm the boundaries and scopes of traditional territories of indigenous villages to work toward meeting the objective of securing traditional land rights. Indigenous areas are blessed with abundant natural hot springs, complemented by breathtaking scenery. The Department of Land Management is working to develop these resources to boost revenues in Indigenous areas. The CIP's demarcation of Indigenous Reserve Lands program assists Indigenous persons in their search for lands that once belonged to their ancestors. Taiwan Indigenous Culture Park was created to preserve Indigenous culture, to carry out academic research and exchanges, and to develop educational and tourism opportunities. The emphasis is on the presentation of traditional Indigenous architecture and dwellings. With its natural setting, this is a beautiful outdoor museum. The Narawan Theater presents traditional song and dance performances to visitors from around the world that are the culmination of years of field surveys in Indigenous areas.
原民会未来的工作将充实并完备原住民相关的法治体系，推动原住民自治，稳固原住民文化和学术的存在，增进原住民社会经济的发展，让族人有更优质的生活。